Hey guys, so I was talking with my daughter last night, and one of the most beautiful things I have loved about my journey thus far, especially since the experience I kind of talked about 4.5, 5 years ago that I had, that just really transformed me in a lot of ways, opened my eyes to a lot of things because it kind of brought me to the point where I was forced to, right? I kind of got brought to that point where what I knew, what I was doing, it wasn't working. And so I was ready to surrender and just try a new way. That's what I've loved so much about my journey since then is how I have been able to see various aspects, the growing aspect, just been able to learn so much through my interactions with individuals. And my interaction with my daughter has been my favorite because, she reminds me of a lot of me when I was younger. We were having a conversation last night and, the discussion came up that is something that I kind of run across a lot and I see a lot. And it was this, almost like this negative judgment. She was feeling an emotion. She was feeling a certain way, an emotion, and it just seemed to be a bit disproportionate for what she was going through or the situation. And she just was frustrated. And she's like, I just don't want to feel like this. What's going on? Why can't I get over it, basically, right? And, what I talked to her about is really the same thing. It's what I learned through my own experience, through walking things out, and also what I share, with clients in my coaching practice. And that's this. I think one of the biggest roadblocks to people being able to successfully maneuver through the healing process is that feeling of, when our emotions come up in us, it's a negative judgment. When we're feeling a certain way, it's whether we're comparing how we're feeling about it with somebody else or, whatever it is that brings up this negative judgment that makes us feel like, I just want it to go away. I just want to repress it, or I want to do whatever to get it to go away. But one of the most important parts of the process of healing is to be able to sit in the emotions that we feel, right? We have to understand the human nervous system, the central nervous system, understanding the way biologically and physiologically that the brain, emotions arise, that the brain works, how the body functions in tandem, the processes behind it. It's so important to have knowledge of these things, because with that knowledge, you come to understand the necessity, the purpose of the reactions, the purpose of certain things. And when it comes to emotions, it's part of your autonomic nervous system, right? So that means it's not something you can control, right? So your nervous system, right? It picks up on some perceived threat. There's something going on that then causes an electrical and chemical signaling that goes to the brain, and that is where your emotions come from, right? So when you're having an emotional, it doesn't matter the magnitude, when you're having an emotional response to something, it's a signal, right? It's a message, it's speaking to you, right? And when we find ourselves in difficult situations, or we're feeling hurt, somebody's done something, or there's just something that's happened and we're having get triggered and we have a bit of a disproportional reaction to it, right? It's sending us a message. And that message that it's trying to send us to, it comes through your unconscious, right? So there's been some signal, your nervous system has sent a signal, right? And it has now gone up through your subconscious mind and it has pulled up emotions. And when we understand the purpose of that and how it is that right there, it's the feeling of emotion that's then registered in our conscious perception that allows us to be alerted, or our attention, our conscious awareness, be brought to some attention that there's something going on. There was something during that process of chemical signaling, the nervous system perceiving something. There was something that it went through some memory. There is something in there that then drew up that response, triggered that emotional response, right? And let me explain to you the power in two things, right? The power of being able to sit in an emotion that feels very uncomfortable without rejecting it, without negatively judging it, right? I call this the art of becoming a compassionate witness. We need to understand that as a biological creature, the physiological processes that happen, especially in the brain, those are autonomic things, right? That is a function of biology, a function of physiology, right? And that's just what happens. It's just the stuff that happens. It's how it works. It's based on the biology of the brain, the anatomy of the brain, the chemical, the presence, the distribution of neurotransmitters. It has to do with the function of the entirety of the brain, the physical biological brain, right? And so there's that aspect of our brain, our mind, that plays into our awareness, or not our awareness, but our perception of things, right? But we also have an awareness of that, right? An example is when something happens and you have a thought. Well, a thought pops in your mind. You have the thought, but then you have this other part, your awareness of that thought, that then allows you to look at that thought, you perceive that thought, you judge that, you think about that thought, right? So that's your awareness, right? So a lot of times when we find ourselves in certain, we have to understand that the awareness part of it is where we can become a compassionate witness. It's being a neutral observer, right? This is something that was so powerful for me, right? When I was able to start to sit in my emotion without negatively judging it, and feeling it, not being scared of feeling it. It was then that you have to understand, it's like I was telling my daughter, when you have a strong emotion that then births tears, right? You're crying. What that really is that the energy in your body, all the stuff going on in your body has then now formed into physical form, and it's being excreted from your body as fluid, as a teardrop. It's really the same way as when a cloud, right? A cloud starts to form from the water coming, the evaporation of water, and when it gets full, once it gets full, and then it releases it, right? It's really the same thing. It's really the same thing. And so when we understand that, and we understand that sometimes it takes that releasing of the tears, the releasing of the emotion, the allowing without judgment, the free allowance of allowing our emotions to flow however they come, sitting in that, letting them without judgment. Sometimes it takes that. That's releasing, that's your body's way of releasing the pent-up energy, whatever's going on, right? And so once that energy, it's basically the energy has become so heavy, like in a cloud, you see what I'm saying? Instead of cloud, like rain or water in a cloud, that it needs to be released. And so the process is, if you can sit with that and allow it to release, right? It then causes, it may, maybe a storm, it may be tears and anger, whatever it is. Do you see what I'm saying? The analogy is very fitting though, if you think about it. But once you allow that to happen, what then happens, right? The storm starts to cessate, it starts to cease. It starts to calm. And so this is the process, your body, when we can understand and work with our physiological being, right? And be a compassionate witness, a neutral observer of the process of what's going on in our awareness, right? Now all that chaos, that energy, the weight, the thickness of it, it's being released. And once that happens, right? Once the energy is allowed to flow out, right? It then calms things. And it's generally then, it's my experience, that is when things can start to become clear. The sky starts to clear a little. And so the very thing that was triggering, whatever it was in your subconscious mind that you are not consciously aware of, that has you asking, why am I feeling this? Where's this intensity of emotion coming from? Well, now you've you've allowed it to release without judgment. You've allowed your body to do what your body does, right? Without judgment. Well, now it's coming out of you, and now the sky starts to clear. Now your mind starts to clear. And you can start to begin to see, what was that response pointing me to? What was it that was going on in me that triggered such a strong resonance with the situation, right? It's just such an important process, and it's a very, very necessary process. But the crazy thing is, we have just been conditioned. A lot of people, especially when we're talking about the male population, right? What is the message? The message that's been sent for generations, right? The message, the continued, consistent message is emotions are weakness. Feeling is bad. It's weakness. You're weak. There's a very negative connotation and almost a stigma put on feeling, on being able to feel, but not just being able to feel authentically without there being judgment, right? This isn't some license to, if you're feeling strong emotions and you get angry, this is not some license to go out and break shit, right? That's not what this is about. It's about not having any action. It's about not allowing your actions to be the way in which energy is released. It's a natural process of unfolding that keeps it within. It keeps it within. You're allowed to release the energy. But where your action is focused, where your mind is focused, where your intention is focused, is inside of you. Not trying to attach the emotion on something external from you, but trying to understand where the emotion was pointing you. What in me needs attention? What was it trying to show me, right? And a lot of the ways a lot of the little steps or little tricks or little hacks you can use to kind of identify, maybe where it's resonating, what's going on, is by looking at the situation that triggered it and removing the face. Remove the personal details of it and just step back and pick out the most fundamental pattern you can see, right? For example, somebody who has had a situation where, they have been in a series of bad relationships, right? Where they have been betrayed, left abandoned, they have just not had a good experience, and there's a lot of hurt with that, right? It's made them feel like something's wrong with them, right? A lot of times those type of behaviors play out over and over again in our lives because there was something from childhood, there was some wound from childhood, or a core belief, a self-defeating core belief that we came to think about ourselves, or a way we came to see ourselves that aligned with certain things, maybe in our relationship with our father or a caregiver or somebody that was important to us, where, the love we experienced had to be earned, or there was, rejection there. I wasn't good enough, there's all kinds of different reasons. But, for somebody who experiences a situation where something happens, a lot of times people who have issues with trust that are very hurt, they have a difficult time making connections with other people. And so what they will do is they always kind of keep things at a distance. But when things start to get too close, right, it triggers the response, and they subconsciously, without even knowing it, they become maybe jealous, or they become insecure. And when the way those insecurities play out, right, it ends up sabotaging. It's a form of kind of self-sabotage, right? But when that person finds themselves in a situation and this repeated pattern, or you're finding yourself being triggered emotionally in a way that you can't shake, or it's just significant and intense, if you can look at the situation and say, at the fundamental, take the person's name, the specific details, take the personal face out of it, but just at the situation itself, what does this remind me of? There's something in here that my nervous system, right, that some memory has been triggered based on my nervous system, right, that is picking up on a pattern. It's picking up on a perceived threat. My mind has an image or a blueprint of this pattern, and the what it looks like, and that blueprint then becomes almost like a memory. It's almost like something that's the lens through which you then view things, a part of that lens. And then what ends up happening is the emotions that you felt before, the memory of those emotions, it's imprinted in your subconscious mind, right? So when your nervous system then perceives something going on that picks up on that same pattern, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, it then ends up triggering that. And what happens is the physiological response that you have to something that may not have been there may not have been some massive act of betrayal. There may not have been but the physiological response that you feel, it actually ends up being more consistent with past hurts. It's more consistent with the imprint over time of the pain you felt, or the rejection, or just whatever it is. It ends up being more consistent with that, right? And so that's a really big thing to understand. But really, first base, one of the biggest parts, it transformed my life, right? I got to the point where I was pushed to the place where there was it couldn't go any lower. So for me, sitting through the uncomfortableness of that, once I kind of got an understanding of that, sitting through the discomfort was more comfortable than going back to where I was, right? And I don't want you to have to get there, right? That's kind of, it's kind of where my purpose and my passion and my business and just where I'm going, that's kind of how it was launched, right? Because, when you've been through stuff, right, you can share your story and hopefully it can, spark something that keeps somebody else from having to repeat or get to that place that you were, right? So, I wanted to just jump on here and talk about that really quickly. Becoming a compassionate witness, right? And understanding the purpose, right? I would love for you guys to, really seek out and educate yourself. Go in and kind of read about the autonomic nervous system, right? Go read about the neurological and biological processes in the brain, how perception works. Wikipedia for this kind of stuff, it's a great resource because what's so amazing about Wikipedia is that you can go and look up something, and within each article, there's another word. It could be a reference to something, but you can click it, and you could just, before you know it, it connects things together in a way that you can click a word, you can be starting with something like perception, and then you can end up reading about neurogenesis, about how the brain, develops, and literally going back to the beginning of human life, right? You can go from that to then, it just takes you everywhere. And so I would really invite you guys I wanted to just kind of drop the seed, but I want to invite you guys to consider that, and then to go in and just kind of read about it, right? There is so much power in knowing yourself, right? That was, I think, the greatest thing. I got to know myself. I got to know my body. I got to be able to trust my body. I realized a lot of my emotional intensity, a lot of even things from early childhood, really stemmed around the fact that I am a naturally sensitive person. I can pick up on things, people say different things, you can pick up on vibes, whatever. It felt very scary when I was younger because I could not make sense of it. But that's really what's happening. We have so many people who are truly sensitive and have the ability to perceive things in the environment that are not physically seeable, right? And this is quantum physics, right? Everything around us, we're surrounded by waves. There's no empty space around us, right? Everything, there's the visible aspects that we can see that falls within the visible spectrum of light that the human eye can see. But there's so much going on outside of that. All the different, do you see what I'm saying? And so that's what your nervous system does. Your nervous system can perceive outside of what our 5 physical senses can perceive, right? In our eyes, what we can visually see based on the visible spectrum of light. And a lot of people don't even understand. I know I struggle with this. A lot of the feelings you may be feeling, the things that if you feel chaotic, it's because you have a very sensitive nervous system. It's really a gift, but it seems it feels like a curse, and it does not seem like a good thing if you're just not aware of what it is, right? It's very overwhelming, right? And so a lot of times this is where the stigma comes from, right? This is where, you have kids, especially, nowadays, you have kids who are being, stigmatized and labeled as like ADD or like, you know what I'm saying? Because maybe they have these mood swings, right? But like, if you notice that your child, you can tell the character or you can tell something about another child just by the way your child acts when they come home, the changes, that they're very influential. If they can be in a good mood and then you go into somebody's house, or some event or something, and all of a sudden they get moody or they seem more irritated, right? It's just a symbol of, oh, you're being irritated, or knock that off, right? But there is, underneath that, there could be a very reasonable scientifically backed explanation for that. And that could be that they are just very sensitive and able to pick up on all of the things going on. And so when they don't know that and can't articulate it, it just the emotion, they feel the emotion and then they act on that, right? So, all of these things, it's very, there's such a negative view or perception of a lot of things that really are gifts. They're really very positive things that if understood and if understood and if molded properly, they become molded into very empowering things that will launch you beyond what you could ever really even imagine. And the more you become in tune with it, the more you know yourself, you can start to understand it and you start moving in it, and then it starts working, and then you trust it more, and then you see it and it just starts unfolding. It's very empowering. So I just wanted to jump on here and talk about that really quick. Encourage you to go out and get, study some stuff, right? See if you can understand things on a deeper level. Just kind of seek it out for yourself. Also, if you resonate with any of this, if you are having an experience like that, or anything resonated with you and you'd like to set up a session to talk about it or whatever, shoot me an email, reintegratedwellness@gmail.com. You can also go on my website, www.reintegratedwellness.com. Go to the contact page and you can actually contact me from there. I'm so excited about this new year. I'm so excited about where things are. I know it has seemed very negative. It's been very difficult, uncomfortable for a lot of people in 2020, right? But we are to the point where a lot of the familiar things have been torn down, and it's actually an opportunity. It's an opportunity to rebuild, right? So if things weren't working, if you were feeling stuck, or you're still feeling stuck, stagnant, maybe you just need like a little spark, right? Let's connect, right? There's no obligation financially for you to reach out, to schedule a session. I want to connect, right? I want to share my story, because I really, truly, I feel as though I have a really firm grasp on, what's going on as far as the opportunity, and just my own personal work. And I just would like to share that with you. So like I said, if you're interested, shoot me an email, reintegratedwellness@gmail.com. Anywho, I hope you guys have a brilliant remainder to your day. I will jump on again soon. Thanks, guys.